How do I teach an iTalki trial lesson? What should I cover in an iTalki trial lesson? What should I do during an iTalki trial lesson? And how to teach an iTalki trial lesson. These are the topics I am going to cover in today's video, so you want to stick up to the very end. Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. I'm so glad that you are watching. If you're new here, welcome, karibu. On this channel we talk about making money, mostly online. We talk about side hustle opportunities, and we also talk about passive income. So if any of these topics sound exciting to you, you want to hit the subscribe button below, and once you have done so, you want to hit the notification bell as well, so that every single time I shoot a new video, you do not miss out. So in today's video, I'm going to talk about iTalki trial lessons. And what is an iTalki trial lesson? So an iTalki trial lesson, okay, first of all, what is iTalki? So iTalki is a platform, online platform that brings together people who are interested in learning a foreign language together with the native speakers of those foreign languages. And yeah, the tutors get paid. You can join the platform as a community tutor. What this means, you don't have to be certified as a teacher, or you can join as a professional tutor, which means you have a certificate in teaching the language you will be teaching. So check this playlist up here where I cover all the nitty-gritties, how to register for iTalki, how much money you can make, what languages you can teach, and everything else. So an iTalki trial lesson is whereby iTalki gives a discounted lesson to the student so that they can get a feel of how the platform looks like, how are the teachers, they can find an appropriate teacher for them. And each student gets one trial lesson per teacher and a total of 3 trial lessons. So this gives them a chance to get a feel of the iTalki platform, try out at most 3 teachers and identify their teaching styles so that they can settle on one that they feel matches their learning style, and also the teacher can make a decision if a particular student learning style matches their teaching style. So the thing about iTalki trial lessons is that they are not compulsory for at least this teacher. So what that means is when you're setting up your courses, your lessons on the iTalki platform, it is not compulsory for you to teach trial lessons. But personally, they are my favorite, and for 3 main reasons. Number one, they're very short. So all trial lessons are 30 minutes long maximum. And then secondly, unlike the other lessons where iTalki takes 15% of whatever you earn or whatever you charge per hour, for trial lessons, there's no commission. Like if you're charging $8 for your 30-minute trial lesson class, you keep all the money. And then the minimum you can charge for a trial lesson is $1. They are not free. But sometimes I've had cases whereby some people say, oh, this student approached me and I want to give them a trial lesson offline. Do not do that, because you'll be missing out on money. Yeah. And also it's just good to do stuff on the platform. Yeah. The platform help you find a student. So just do your stuff on the platform and it's free. So if you want to set up your trial lesson, it's almost, as a teacher or a tutor, it's almost similar like how you set up your regular lesson. So what you'll need to do, you go to teacher settings. Once you've gone to teacher settings, click on lessons and availability, and then click on lesson management, which will take you to the next landing page, which is lessons. And once you're on lessons, click on trial lessons. You'll find like a slider. Yeah? So if you've not set up for trial lessons, it will be grayish. So what you want to do is to click on this slider so that it turns, is it red or green? I don't remember. And it turns on your status to availability. So it's very simple to set up. And then of course you'll be asked how much you want to charge. It's really up to you. For me, I charge, yeah, you can check my profile, it's public. I love them. I love trial lessons because, like I've mentioned, I get to keep all the money. it gives me a chance to know more about my student in a very short time. So let's dive into how to handle your first trial lesson, and I'm basically going to speak about my experience, how I do it, and this is pretty much how I handle most of my other lessons, especially the first lesson with a student. And sometimes you might be lucky a student decides to book with you without doing a trial lesson, so it really depends, and I've had both cases. But I'm going to talk about what I do when I get my first trial lessons. What do I cover? How do I teach it? And this is pretty much how I cover most of my first lessons with a student. So as I mentioned, it's a 30-minute class, and I split mine into 3 parts, each about 10 minutes long. So for the first part of the lesson, like the moment a student comes online, if let's say we are using Skype or we are using the iTalki platform, it doesn't matter what we are using. So the first thing that I do is to greet them. So I teach I teach Kiswahili and the Luo on iTalki. So the first thing when you log in, obviously I will be smiling. I have talked about it. It's the greatest icebreaker that I have learned. I'm always there at least 1 minute before the student. I don't want to find the student in the class. I want the student to find me, or let's find each other. So when they come, the first thing they're going to be finding is a very smiley Eva. I'll just be there smiling all my teeth out, and it helps them to keep comfortable. And most 99% of the time, the student will smile back at me. And I'll be like, habari yako sasa, or if it's a Luo class, I would be like, idinade, you know. So that's how I break the ice, by greeting. And if the student responds back to me in, if I said, for example, sasa, and they said poa, or I said hujambo, and they said sijambo, or if I greeted them and then they responded back, then I would continue speaking in Kiswahili. And the reason, or if it's Luo class, and the reason I do this is so that I see how far they can go. Because in part 1, the first 10 minutes, I'm trying to gauge 3 things. How is the student's language level? How much do they already know or don't know? And it also helps me to know what I'm going to teach in part 2. So part 1 is know the student's learning level. Part 2 is a demonstration of how a typical class would look like. So I'll do an actual teaching. And then part 3 is just for us to go over how we think we can move forward, what's the student's preferred learning style, and stuff like that. So depending on how this initial conversation goes, so mostly there will be 2 reactions. The student would be like, habari mzuri, how are you, blah, 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 and then they can't go beyond that. So at that moment, I would ask, actually, they 99.9% will be like, hey, Eva, I don't know anything beyond that. Or if I find a student who maybe already has some background knowledge in Kiswahili or the Luo, or whatever language it is that you're teaching, they'll be like, okay, so I've been learning Kiswahili, or I've been learning Xhosa, whatever, English, and I just need to practice so I don't forget, and then we'll pick it from there. So the other thing I'll be doing, so if I find, let's say, the student has like 0 knowledge of my language, then I'll simply of the language I'm trying to teach, I'll simply move to part 2. No, I'll skip to part 3, where I'll be asking them, okay, so why did you decide to learn this language? So of course I'll be doing that in English. Have you learned another language before? And the reason I want to know if you've learned another language before is so that I can ask the next question, what is your preferred learning style? What worked for you? What didn't work? And stuff like that. Then I want to know, for example, what country are you in? For time zone purposes, so I don't be saying good morning when it's good evening, for example. I want to know what you do for a living, and of course I want to know why you want to learn Kiswahili or the Luo. Again, it's because people learn languages for different reasons, and when I know the reason for you learning a language, I know where to start, what things to cover early on, and stuff like that. If I find a student who can speak a little bit more about in Kiswahili or in the Luo or in whatever language I'm teaching, and you can apply the same thing, then these questions that I'm asking in English, ask them in that language, and that's what I'll be doing. Like, hey, kwa nini unajifunza Kiswahili, and stuff like that. And through this process, I will be not only gauging the students' level of Kiswahili, but I will also be getting information that will be very vital for the demonstration class. So I'll give an example. At the shooting of this video, the Taliban have just taken over Afghanistan, and the president has left Afghanistan, which is very, very unfortunate. So at around that time, I got a student who happens to be working with the refugees in a certain European country. For privacy, I will not say which one. And the student is working with the refugees. She's a social worker. She's working with refugees from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And when he started speaking, I could tell she pretty much has basic understanding of Kiswahili. And I asked her, what do you do? She told me she's a social worker. So I asked her, just tell me about yourself in Kiswahili. And she told me she's a social worker. She works with the refugees from Congo. And currently she's relying on a translator to translate for her from Kiswahili to her language. And then she says whatever she wants to say and the translator translates back. And the reason is because she doesn't, because they're too busy working, there's no time for her to start, you know, can we learn some bit of Kiswahili and stuff like that, and that's why she wants to learn. So when it came to the demonstration of an actual class, which is part 2, takes me about 10 minutes, I told her, like, hey, as somebody who is a social worker, and all this I'm saying in Kiswahili, as somebody who's a social worker and you work with refugees, what are your personal opinion about what's going on in Afghanistan right now? And then we had a conversation about that, and we just talked about, you know, what's going on and the women and the children. And then I also told her, for me, Afghanistan is very personal to me, like it's very dear to my heart. I lived in Afghanistan for 3 years, and, you know, with my baby and all that stuff, so I really feel their pain and everything else. And that was like a topic of conversation. So it was very important for me that we found something that was common to both of us. She's a social worker, she works with refugees. I have worked in Afghanistan. This is what was going on. So you wanna make sure by the time you're going into your trial classroom, you have at least 3 or 4 topics, because you do not know your student, you don't know nothing about them, unless if you're fortunate and they filled in the questionnaire, which sometimes they fill, sometimes they don't. A good majority don't fill, and you don't get too much information unless you're very lucky. So always have at least 3 to 4 topics at different levels. So I always have 2. Number 1 for a beginner student and for one who is not a beginner. So for a beginner student, obviously, if at the preliminary level I realize they have very little knowledge of Kiswahili, then part 2 will just dive into what a class with me looks like, and I'll just tell them, fine, thank you for all the information they've given about me, so let's just dive in. And usually I start with the alphabet and the pronunciations and a little grammar about family and introduction and stuff like that. I will do this for 10 minutes, and then I'll be like, hey, so that's how a typical class with me would look like. If it's somebody who's a bit knowledgeable, like this student I've just talked about, we'll mostly do conversation, because that's what I cover in my class. When I have a student who already has knowledge in Kiswahili or Doluo, we'd spend like 80% of our classes will be conversation, because remember, you're learning a language and I want you to be able to speak by the time we finish our class. So we just have a conversation on different topics, and I usually tailor my topics on the students' interest or on their profession or something they're already doing day to day, because it gives them a chance to practice. So like the case I've just mentioned, she's a social worker working with refugees. There's this that is going on in Afghanistan. It was a very easy topic for her to talk about. She didn't have to start thinking, okay, what is this, you know? So you want to make sure that happens. So I always have like 3 to 4 conversational topics. And then I also have like what I cover in grammar, my initial lessons in grammar. So that's pretty much how my part 1 and part 2 would go. That is the first 10 minutes intro. Second 10 minutes would be a demonstration of a lesson. And then the last 10 minutes, I'll just tell the students, so well, that's pretty much how a class with me would look like. What do you think? And I want to just hear back from them. Does it work for you? What is your preferred learning style? Have you learned another language before? And then I would tell them about my availability, like this is how I'm available, what my lessons are like. I offer single lessons. I also offer package lessons. You're free to choose whatever works for you. Feel free to, you know, get in touch with me when I'm talking. And if I'm too fast, you can always stop me. If I'm too slow, you can stop me. If a class is scheduled and you're sick or for some reason you can't join the class, and maybe the allowable time for iTalki standards has lapsed. I think it's 12 hours. You can't cancel a lesson as a student 12 hours before the class. As a teacher, I think it's 24 hours before the class. So I let them know you can always contact me and we can do an arrangement and all that. I let them know my policies, availability, and all that. So that's pretty much how I handle my first lesson on iTalki and how I handle my trial classes. So, well, guys, that's it for today in terms of what to teach on your first trial lesson. How do I teach my first trial lesson? What do I cover on my first trial lesson or any lesson for that matter? Let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions, thoughts, feedback, and let's give this video a thumbs up, guys. Thank you for staying up to the very end. I definitely look forward to meeting you on the next one. Bye-bye.